I'm Will Hedrick.
And I'm Jordan Schaffer.
And this is Dog Ears and Timestamps, a book club podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about chapters 6, 7, 8, and 9. This book is getting really fucking good.
Oh yeah, man. This book is awesome. How's your week, though? Like, how did you enjoy this awesome week book?
It was more of the same. Just work or whatever.
Yeah.
Reading this time, I did all at airports and on planes.
That's what I was about to ask. I was talking to you about it this weekend. We were texting a little bit, and you said you were flying, literally, and reading.
Yeah.
Like, oh, that's cool.
I flew to Houston and back for the day.
Okay.
So I was just reading it at the airport, and then on the planes.
How was Houston?
It was fine. I didn't see a whole lot of it because I landed, went to Minute Maid Park, saw the Astros game, left.
That was a good game. I think I caught some of it on TV. Doesn't matter. Yeah.
But so that's what I did was I just spent all the time reading, then I read it the second time today for my notes or whatever.
Nice.
What about, I guess you're still listening to it all, right? So you catch that at work a lot? Yeah,
I didn't read it this time. The first time, I think one of the first episodes I read it, or at least a little bit more of it. This time I strictly listened to it. And I didn't mean to, but I sort of came down to the end of the week when I was like crushing this book. I was listening to it. I listened to it like twice today. It's only about 2.5 hours of listening, of audio. So it really wasn't that hard to like listen to it twice today.
Right.
But even listening to it because of the way, we were going over it earlier, our notes and stuff is definitely worth a couple listens to make sure I got all the details and was figuring it out. But it was good. The reason it took so long was it was a busy week. I ended up closing on that house that I told you last week. Yeah. That I was going to buy. So I've just been busy moving and not really listening to the book though, unfortunately. But I listened to it a lot on like Sunday and Monday, and then today. Yeah. So just like the last 3 days is kind of cramming, I guess. Yeah. But it was really good. I mean, it's hard to always stop this book. We always tend to leave it on a really big cliffhanger. So it's like forcing yourself to stop is so hard. I guess maybe that's why it's hard for me to get kind of back into it again if I give it a couple days. But yeah, so the chapter 6 is where we left off, and it kind of starts off with Richard doing a mental diary. He takes a log of just his old life, what he was doing, where he used to be, how he used to have all these things, and just what made him what he defined himself as, Richard. And it's silly because he does this, as far as we can tell, only once. Like in the 9 chapters that we've read.
It seems like this is just like a goofy intro to the story, coming back off of
a bit of another cliffhanger, actually, because it left you off thinking about the Angel Islington. Yeah.
So with that dramatic cliffhanger about like, oh, here's the Angel Islington or Islington, and then it's just like, okay, well now we'll just cut back to the party. Rich is doing a goofy thing because he's also in the middle of losing it.
Oh yeah. I wonder, have you ever done like a mental diary like that, just to keep a log of things, like if you're gone?
I mean, I talk to myself in my head all the time because I'm a crazy person. And for a while, I kept an actual journal for a few years. I haven't written in it now for like 3 or 4 years.
That's cool. I never
did that.
It was just interesting. I had recently listened to a podcast where they had a guy on there that was a journalist who had been abducted by Somalian pirates, and he said to kill time, he ended up rewriting things in his head that he thought needed rewriting. And every day he'd have about his first 2.5 hours taken care of because he had this whole long book verse that he had basically memorized himself because he kept repeating it over and over and over again. And that was how he kept his sanity. So I just thought it was kind of funny that I don't think of Richard as Richard. I think of Richard as Neil Gaiman. So I thought it was like Neil Gaiman's version of like how a person would keep their sanity because he's a writer. So I don't know. I didn't know if that correlated with anybody else, but I thought it was definitely interesting.
Pretty decent chance that's exactly what that is.
It's also interesting because right then it's like when we get a little bit more about how obviously the Marquis de Carabas does not think Richard is even worth any effort at all. Like
I have a hard time pinning down any of Carabas's motives.
Yeah, he's just so loose.
Yeah, he's I think like we said last week, he is without moral. He's doing his own thing, whatever he decides is best for whatever purpose. It might not even be his own purpose necessarily.
He seems to be a bit of a puppeteer too, of like, a grander purpose, maybe his or someone else's. And you get another taste of that here because he's like, I don't even want to spend any effort on you. And Richard just constantly is sitting there pointing out stuff like, angels? There's no such thing as angels. How are we looking for angels? There are no shepherds in shepherd's bush, Yeah. And then just lo and behold, there are angels and there are shepherds in shepherd's bush.
They're walking along, going towards eventually Islington.
Yeah, we left them in a train station. I couldn't remember, honestly.
I think we still left them in the sewers.
Oh, in the sewers.
And they've now come out, and now they're in they enter a tube passageway.
A tube.
The tube.
Yeah.
When they're going through that tube passageway between stations, it probably says between stations, but I don't remember.
Yeah.
They run into somebody who's playing a saxophone. Richard notices that the man playing the saxophone can see them, so he's somebody of the below. They talk for a second.
Oh, yeah, that was a cool interaction just because Rich was like, this guy can see us. And like, the Marquis stops in front of him, and he's like, he knows his name. It's like, the Marquis
everybody knows the Marquis, and the Marquis seems to know everybody.
Yeah.
But that's his thing, is that he knows everything.
At least everybody in the under London below or whatever seems to know about him. So, we were talking about it earlier, and the thing he trades Lear, is it a physical thing, or is it just he teaches him something?
He teaches him a song.
Okay,
we're after Earl's Court, continued the Marquis. Would you happen to have such a thing as a train timetable about your person?
Right.
So they enter a trade, as they always do. Marquis teaches him a song for getting money off of people, and teaches it to him using his penny whistle. But
okay, that's how he did it. I thought he gave him the penny whistle, but no, that makes more sense. The way he said it, though, was, they say, he said idly, that if he were simply passing the time, that Merlin's... they say, he said idly, as if he were simply passing the time, that Merlin's master Blaise once wrote a reeling so beguiling that it would charm the coins from the pockets of anyone who heard it. He wrote a reel. I guess that's wrote a song.
Yeah, I guess a reel is some sort of slang or something like that for a tune or a song or whatever.
And you're right.
Or an enchantment even.
Yeah. Then so he taught him the tune on the penny whistle. Yeah, it was a tune that just made it so that anyone who heard it would give him money. And
it seemed to be like a nostalgic inducing thing, because then Richard, there's a little short passage where Richard talks about how he reminds him of whenever he was young, listening to pop music with his friend on lunch break or whatever like that, and everybody that dropped coins on the dude's coat was like kind of like smiling wistfully and whatever like that. So it's definitely like a bit of, I mean, obviously because of later, is an enchantment of sorts.
Yeah, it's definitely not just a song, because obviously like not everybody's gonna have that same nostalgia that Richard felt of a pop song especially from
his period, you know,
especially from a penny whistle. Like,
right,
you're not gonna play a cool.
He's not playing Britney Spears
song.
on a penny whistle.
No, Hit me, baby, one more time.
Right.
But
she's actually coming to town with Bruno Mars at the F1 races in October.
No way. How did she get with Bruno?
I don't know. And it might be a multiple day thing. So maybe one day Bruno's playing and one day she's playing, and the F1 races are going on. So I don't know. There's just a billboard on the way out as you're going out 290.
Okay, that's pretty cool.
Anyways,
she's coming back, just like just like reading.
Right? Just like reading. We're bringing it back.
Yeah, go Britney.
We're bringing sexy back to reading. Like Justin Timberlake brought sexy back, who dated Britney Spears at one point. It's connected. We're all connected. The world is one.
I think we're done. That's the point of the book. Book over. Good job, Neil Gaiman.
We did it.
Okay. Next week. No, but for real.
So then we jump ahead there.
Well, I want to say one thing, because he alludes, the Marquis alludes to Lear that he says, but a word to the wise, don't overuse it. A little goes a very long way. And then he's talking about the song they just taught him, like, just use it a little bit, obviously.
Right. Yeah, after that little warning, they continue down. They get to the train station that they're going to wait at.
They hear a tune that all Londoners apparently are familiar with, called Mind the Gap.
Yeah.
I don't know how it sounds. I imagine a London woman saying, Mind the Gap.
Right, something like that.
Yeah. And
they're waiting for the train. Richard looks over the edge of the platform, thinking about mindless train station stuff.
Yeah,
he gets attacked by a smoke monster. Yeah, not minding the gap. Yeah. Smoke monster comes up, grabs him. Hunter saves him.
Yeah, and Hunter's like, I even warned you about that. Like, Hunter's not really mad at him, I don't think, ever. I think she just kind of laughing like he's a little kid. She seems pretty emotionless. Yeah. Once
in a while, Richard commentates on how he thinks that he sees like the start of a smile, like I think probably like 2 or 3 times throughout what we've read so far, but she doesn't seem to really be paying attention or caring about anything.
Yeah, it might just be me that I like the character so much that I think that she likes Richard, you know, but I get the vibe.
She might find him amusing or something that.
I get the vibe that she enjoys him being around because she, I don't know, I think we'll talk about it later, but she just always seems to enjoy his little comments or like trying to trick him up or seeing if he remembers something she taught him.
He's funny in a way because he's constantly denying everything that happens, even though it's already happened or whatever. And it's just like, well, that can't be a thing or whatever.
Yeah, angels don't exist.
Interesting. Krupp and Vandemar are wandering around the central well of the hospital. Krupp is furious about their employer. A telephone began to ring, loudly. Mr. Krupp and Mr. Vandemar looked around, puzzled. Eventually, Mr. Vandemar found the telephone halfway down a pile of rubble on top of a scree of water-stained medical records. Broken wires trailed from the back of it. He picked it up and passed it to Mr. Krupp. For you, he said. Mr. Vandemar did not like telephones.
How do you imagine Mr. Vandemar's voice?
Mr. Vandemar, I think I'm just taking it totally literally from the description when they first introduce him, is it's just totally flat. Flat, emotionless. There's never any emphasis on any individual syllable.
Yeah.
It's just a complete, like, not even a robot voice, because even a robot voice has some variation, but his is, he's just like a completely monotone, nothing, everything that he says. And it's not even potentially like, because there's some things that he says every now and then that like you would make fun of somebody for saying like he's a stupid person.
Yeah.
But I think he's just so without anything that it just comes off that way. Yeah.
I don't think that he's necessarily dumb, but you're right. Yeah, I think he does come off like just sort of as,
because he's got no like emotion. He has like no preconception or anything. He's just like,
he's only really good at like a couple things.
Right.
Like, because
just
of that,
like destroying shit.
Yeah. And because of that, he seems super like dumb. But
he's like seems simple.
Yeah,
he's
almost. Simple. That's the right way to say it. Yeah.
Let's see.
Well, that's cool because that's sort of how he does. He does a really good job with the voice. I think of them too. Yeah. Krupp is very sniveling and creepy, and not really necessarily the brains of the operation, but he's very the one with the emotions and the biggest intense voice, whereas Vandemar is more of like a kind of voice. And so I was just curious if that's how if you kept that as you were reading, or because I mean I don't really have a choice, but I mean I thought that based on what you said and the initial description, I forgot it that clearly, but yeah, I mean I guess Neil Gaiman does a really nice job of like keeping that monotonous sort of scary big deep voice, whereas Krupp is just a more energetic, higher pitched voice. But okay, cool. That was interesting.
That's good. Interesting thing about that is the phone isn't connected to anything.
Oh, really?
So, it's a broken wires trailed from the back of it, and they found it in like the middle of a pile of rubble.
In a place that read that.
In a place where they weren't expecting there to be a phone. Like they were just walking around the well to get some like air or whatever. And
very Matrix.
Yeah, because they were like complaining about the employer or whatever, so they're just like hanging out like, okay, well, let's go walk around up here just to do something different. And then the phone rings. So there's some sort of magic involved in the phone ringing. The first time that they get a call from their employer, the phone's connected to, I mean, it's like an 80-year-old phone, but it's connected to something. So it's like, okay, well, maybe it works. Sure. Yeah. But this one is very evidently disconnected. It says so. So there's some sort of spell on one end, it seems like. And I don't know that it'll end up mattering, or if it's just like a cool magic thing that he threw in there just for us to be like, oh, wow, that's kind of neat.
Yeah. Do you remember in the first time we were hanging out with them and they answered the phone, were they bitching about their job that time too?
He complains after the phone call.
Okay.
Prior to the phone call, they're just chilling.
Yeah, I thought so. Okay, I was wondering if it was kind of like a Voldemort thing. You say his name and he hears you and it breaks the spells, and then he knows where you are. Because
like
it seemed very
on his name.
Yeah. Exactly. It seemed very like they were complaining and he's got his eyes on them, so he's like, all right, I'm going to shut this up. And
right.
It also seemed very kind of like the Matrix, how they have like the phone ringing and then like that's the Matrix, he's watching, so he knows where they are and he's like, I got a phone ringing this close to you, and so they go run and look for it and they know it's for them.
It'll be interesting to see if anything else like that happens that we can potentially draw more, evidence on that from.
Definitely.
Yeah, the phone call is their employer. Krupp receives orders to scare Dora, not hurt her. Krupp is very unhappy about this.
Yeah, and
he and Vandemar are assassins, not scarecrows.
Exactly. He says their resume there, too, of like...
Yeah, all this like stuff that they've done or whatever.
just a ton of stuff. Yeah, they burned down the city of Troy, killed a dozen kings, 5 popes, 500 heroes. It's just like I don't know if they're immortal or if... seems like it.
But, they're definitely... well, we've already been more or less told that they're not human.
Yeah.
So they're... who knows what exactly they are. But they've definitely, evidently either can time travel or have lived for a very, very long time.
Yeah.
It says the last commission that they got was like in 17th century or something like that. There's a part where he says the last commission that we performed was the like 1600s monastery and somewhere where they tortured an entire monastery or some shit like that.
Ooh,
I was like, well, that's a long time between jobs, man.
Yeah, they must.
If this is 1990 and here
they're making money. I think it reemphasizes.
It's more like evidence to their badassery.
Yeah, and also like we were saying earlier, Vandemar, I think he tries to play it off as him being more simple than he really is. I think he's writing him to sound dumber than he actually is, because I almost think it was a joke when he asks who it was on the phone, because who else fucking else would it be? And because he guesses wrong, like, of course. And Krupp, like, I don't know.
Somebody for scarecrows?
Yeah, Scarecrow Man.
No, it was our employer. That was going to be my second guess.
Yeah, so I don't think that he literally thought it was a Scarecrow Man. I mean, if he did, then this guy is the dumbest. I mean, because he had to have known, because he gave him the phone. I mean, obviously,
I think he just picked it up and just immediately handed it.
Yeah, it said he hates phones, but I don't know. Who else would be calling?
Right. So they...
anyway, back to the...
Now we jump back to the party. The train they're waiting on arrives. It is a normal train, with a carriage that is dark and locked. Richard mentally commentates on the carriage. He's noticed ones like it before, always wondered what their purpose was. Carabas knocks on the door a little bit, and then nothing really happens. Richard was just wondering if the train would now pull out without them on it, when the door of the dark carriage was pushed open from the inside.
Literally right before this, De Carabas says, like, hey, yo, sidebar, door. I don't think he's going to be super happy to see me.
Yeah.
But that's okay. Knock. You know, like, hey, we're coming in. It's Doran, gang. It's just like, wait, what?
It opened 6 inches, and an elderly, bespectacled face peered out at them. Who knocks, he said. The Lady Door, said the Marquis smoothly, and her companions. The door slid open all the way, and they were in Earl's Court. Yeah,
he definitely rushed that. That was the Marquis taking control, because he was like, oh, by the way, he's not going to be happy to see me, but I need that favor.
Right, yeah. So they enter the carriage. The carriage is a medieval court. Description of this and introduction of the Earl.
Yeah, I was. It made me think of, like, in Game of Thrones when, like, they're hanging out outside of Winterfell and they all have, like, just like where they're shooting archery and stuff. Mm-hmm. How, like, there's just a lot going on. There's, like, the stables and the chickens and there's sword fighting and there's just, like, a lot going on, but it's still in a castle setting. But then it also, in a few minutes, it talks about how they have just a few people sitting down in the court. It said there were chickens and hay.
Yeah, there was, like, all kinds of weird stuff.
Round table. So
it says something about it being everything about a medieval court stuffed inside of a train carriage or something like that.
I guess maybe I don't know what a medieval court is.
So, like, a court is first and foremost the people that make up the court. So you've got the king, all the king's advisors, different nobles and stuff like that. So, like, anytime that we're at King's Landing in Game of Thrones and we're inside the Red Keep and they're talking about whatever, all those people that are there, those are all part of the court.
Okay.
And then the court, secondly, is the location that all of it is, which is usually like the hall or a main hall.
I get it.
For a poor, broken down earldom like this seems to be, maybe they probably also have wild animals running around just wherever because, one, they're all stuffed on a train, so where else are they going to go?
Yeah.
Two, they probably don't. If they had like a full-on castle, maybe they wouldn't have like a proper hall or something like that as well.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I didn't realize that court just meant the people and not necessarily like a courtroom. Like, I sort of associate them together. You know?
That was always, at least that's what I've always taken from context clues and anything that I've ever read. Over time, I have decided that whenever they're talking about a court, it is firstly the people that make it up, and then secondly also the location.
Okay.
But it's like it's not unlike an organization, a form of government in a way. The majority of the people that make up a court, at least in all the stories that I've ever read, end up not really doing anything or having any bearing on anything. They're just nobles there to have things be shown to them.
Okay.
Where the king or queen might, be doing something publicly to be like, look, this is the direction we're going into, and I'm going to show this off to the nobles so that, they can shut the fuck up about whatever.
Yeah, I got you. So, right when we get in here, I don't know. I saw this one little excerpt that was like when the train takes back off, Richard bumps into this gray guy. It says a little gray man. But anyway, he bumps into him, and obviously if Richard bumped into a top worlder person, he would have noticed him too. But it made me think, like, I don't know, it reestablished that Richard was in a different place with new people, but they were all part of the under London below. Yeah, they're all part of that. And whereas before we were in like a train station that seemed like it also had regular you and me type people. But
yeah, well, it seems that the belowers can go above if needed, or if they want to, or whatever. It's no big deal. They just navigate not being noticed.
Okay,
it's just a thing that they deal with or not.
But they obviously notice the upworlder people.
Yeah.
So it's just, I don't know. I guess to me, this was reestablishing that everyone in there is going to notice them and vice versa. It's not just like they might have a random, like it might still be a train station and they might get flooded with people or something. I don't know. Like, you know what I mean? I just thought that maybe in this magic they could, it's because it's in a train car. I thought that maybe some people could get on it that weren't supposed to, but they just didn't see anything that was happening. But
it's a train car that's totally locked.
Oh, yeah.
And they only got in because they were let in.
Yeah, I guess.
And Richard even says, like, I've seen these before, and I was always like, why are they still there? But whatever, you know. And then he immediately forgets, like, after he thinks about it for a second, and is like, whatever. Just like you would have,
I'm sort of like Richard in that respect, let my imagination get carried away. Because literally, you're right. They just said right before that. And just right after, I let my imagination get a hold of me. And like, maybe there are regular people on this, too. But obviously, you're right. Like, they would have had to get let on. Anyway, so we meet the Earl.
Yeah, we meet the introduction of the Earl. He's a super large man, old man, ancient man, even.
Yeah, they say very large, larger than life in every way. He wore an eye patch over his left eye, which had the effect of making him look slightly helpless and unbalanced, like a one-eyed hawk. There were fragments of food in his red-gray beard, and what appeared to be pajama pants were visible at the bottom of his shabby fur gown. He is a little lazy, dirty, and old.
A little run down. They're definitely like
a poor.
It's just like a poor kind of like. I mean, they live in a subway, and then it's also in keeping with everything that seems to be in the London below, where everything's just a little bit run down. They probably don't have a factory churning out new clothes or anything like that. So,
but you're the king, man. Like you should step up a little bit, dude. Lead by example.
Let's see. So there's some introductions where the Earl and Dor talk a little bit. The Earl evidently knew Dor's family. They had been friends and such.
Yeah, he pulls on Dor's heartstrings a little bit too, because, I don't know, he's like, Portico, I love good old Portico, he says, full of ideas. And, like, he's sitting there like, and Dor just keeps like, okay, let's talk about why I'm here. The
jester goes around to see who the others are, reveals who the Marquis is. There's a little bit of tension in the room after that because the Marquis has evidently angered the Earl in the past. And they make fun of Richard a little bit, and then talk to Hunter, but Hunter just kind of shuts down the Fool.
Yeah, nobody seems to... The Fool will not mess with Hunter.
Yeah.
Which is cool.
So the note I have here, some issue between the Marquis and Earl, a deal that the Earl didn't like the result of, which is likely the case for most of Carabas's deals. The Earl is exploding and orders his guards to seize Carabas. Dor is not pleased.
Might I remind your grace, he said urbanely, that we had a deal. I negotiated the peace treaty between your people and the Ravens Court. And in return, you agreed to provide a little favor. He's always asking for favors.
Right.
But yeah, and then Richard's like, oh, there's a Ravens Court then. So, so the Earl is like, that did not go the way I wanted. That's not, you don't deserve a favor.
And so he's going to have him gutted and all that sort of stuff. He's going to kill him.
Yeah, and we kind of learned that just like the Lord is old, like that Lord is old and he is not...
He's starting to become a little forgetful.
Exactly. He can't even remember the threat he made. If he ever entered my domain again, I would have him gutted and dried. Like something that's been gutted first and then dried. It's like, perhaps a kipper, my lord, suggested the jester. It's like, I don't know. He's just every rundown king and everything. Like you can just, in my mind, I just imagine the guy that plays Filch in Harry Potter, who plays Walder Frey in Game of Thrones, just like a creepy old dirty man. That's my visual for this guy. I don't know why. I just make that guy bigger and give him an eye patch, and that's the Earl.
Dor folded her arms and stood taller, putting her head back, raising her pointed chin. She looked less like a ragged street pixie, more like someone used to getting her own way. The opal eyes flashed. Your Grace, the Marquis is with me as my companion on my quest. Our families have been friends for a long time now. But I am forced to say that I will take an act of violence against my companion as an act of aggression against myself and my house. The girl stared up at the old man. And then the Marquis suggests that he go ahead and leave to run some other errands.
The Marquis is like, I'll just go. I know when I'm not wanted, and it seems like you can get something out of this guy if I'm not here. So
then Dor relents, says, okay, yeah, whatever. Dor fixed the Earl with her look. There was something more ancient and powerful in those huge opal-colored eyes and their pale, heart-shaped face than her young years would have seemed to allow. Richard noticed that the room fell quiet whenever she spoke. "Will you let him go in peace, Your Grace?" she asked. He does.
Yeah, and the Marquis says, "I'll see myself out." And one thing, so one of the guards, Halvard, is Halvard a guard? Or is that someone's name?
I think they're all the people that get named are guards. I think like 2 people get named.
Okay, so I guess they just name him. Halvard raises his crossbow, pointed it towards the Marquis' back. Hunter reached out her hand and pushed the end of the crossbow back down toward the floor. Like, Hunter's got everyone's back. Like, don't mess with Marquis. Don't shoot someone in the back. That's probably more what it is. It's
protecting
more
the party.
It's either doing her job or more just like, don't shoot somebody in the back, man. That's not cool. So, I don't know.
Right. But, after Carabas has left and refreshments are brought, the Earl asks why Dor has come to see him. Dor says she's looking to understand what happened and to protect herself. Her family had no enemies that she knew.
Yeah, she's like, vengeance. We didn't have any enemies. Like, why would I need that? I don't know. It seems like she didn't necessarily want vengeance.
That's not her driving. Yeah. That's not the driving factor for her, even though that's what Portico wanted. She's like, first I just need to know what the fuck happened.
Yeah, I just want to know what happened, exactly.
Cut to Carabas. Carabas goes to find Lear, the saxophonist from earlier. Lear is being trampled by people trying to give him money, thanks to the song that Carabas taught him. Carabas plays the counter curse in exchange for a favor. The favor he wants is theft.
Trading favors.
"I find myself in rather urgent need of a piece of Tang Dynasty sculpture." Lear shivered, then slowly he nodded. So he overused the reel that Carabas taught him, even though Carabas told him not to. But who knows how much overusing actually is.
Yeah, Carabas could have just made it... It could have just been so addicting for him to even play the song. Like, it could have just been an addictive song. Because how would that not be fun to play something like that, you know?
Right. It doesn't give us any context or anything that actually happened. It's just, he gets the song, they go away, they come back, he's getting fucked up.
He came right back, though. It gives you the illusion that the Marquis definitely knew. Like, he set that as a trap.
He knew that was going to happen.
He was favor collecting for sure.
Even if it didn't happen that way, the likelihood of it happening was enough for him to at least go back and say, okay, it did happen, sweet, let's go ahead and cash in here. On the way to go do something else that I'm going to go cash in on. He's constantly cashing in on shit. Yeah,
and just keeping a mental tally of all those favors.
He is like the best banker of all time.
Oh yeah, he's a genius too if he just remembers all those people.
We jump back to the party. The party has entered the Earl's library. Dora's asking about how to get to Islington.
It's funny, the way they're introduced is a child, a bravo, and a fool. And Richard's like, which one am I? And everyone's like, dude, you're the fool, obviously. Like, you're the jester, you're the one that we're laughing at and laughing with, you know.
Dora's asking about how to get to Islington. It is becoming apparent that the Earl has severe memory issues, being ancient. He forgets what has been said and who Dor is several times through the conversation. Eventually, Dor is able to get the right information out of the Earl, as well as a scroll. They need to find the Angelus. They are dropped off at British Museum Station, which Richard is appalled at being told exists.
One thing that sort of portrays the Earl's silliness is the Earl was sitting on the floor with his legs splayed, patting the wolfhound and scratching it underneath his chin. He's just like, he was waiting to meet them in the library, and he's sitting on the floor with his legs splayed out, not like a little kid playing with a dog. Yeah. Like, and he's meeting these people for what did they say? Well, they
were seeking an audience.
Seeking an audience. Like, that sounds like you're gonna come see me at my big
that like gets done at the court, and it's like, hey,
well, I didn't think they saw
go back to my library.
He freaked out, yeah. He
chills out or whatever.
Okay, he just relaxes.
And there is a little line that I didn't take because it felt kind of whatever, but they enter in the library. There's a kind of long description of all the junk that's in there. Yeah. And then Hunter reaches over and says, this is where he actually belongs. Things lost and forgotten.
Yeah, this is his real domain, muttered Hunter. Things lost, things forgotten. The room of requirement.
Right.
That sounds like a cool library.
I'm always in for a cool library.
Yeah, me too, man.
Chapter 8.
Yeah.
Old Bailey. Old Bailey, 3 or 4 pages, something like that. Just Old Bailey thinking about how London used to be.
Yeah, it was fun. It's just like a little window into Old Bailey's crazy brain. He sees some Londoner go down into the tube, and it freaks him out. And he goes, into the tube. Brr. Even the thought of going underground made Old Bailey shudder. He was a roof man and proud of it. He had fled the world at ground level so long ago. Right, yeah. I'm a roof man.
I'm a roof man.
But that's when our boy Marquis de Carabas makes his appearance. We're learning what he's doing while the party is...
he's going off doing those other errands that he told Dor he was going to go do. He's looking for information, which Bailey makes a comment on. Oh, that's new, because Carabas apparently already knows everything.
He seems to know everything, so yeah, why would you want information?
He wants to know what the carving he found on Lord Portico's desk is. Bailey trades that information for shoes, gloves, and a balaclava. Bailey tells Carabas that the carving is of the Beast of London, a legend of a creature that escaped from a butcher by the Fleet Ditch, vanished into the sewers, and grew big and old and nasty. Carabas is, no, I thought it was just a legend, but it wasn't, apparently.
Yeah, the bigger the legend, the badder the beast, it seems like.
Bailey asks if Carabas is ready to take back the ornate silver box from last time. I'll take it back when this is all over, he called. Let us hope that you don't have to use it. Old Bailey leaned over. How will I know if I do? You'll know, called the Marquis, and the rats will tell you what to do with it. There's some foreshadowing for whatever is going to happen to Old Bailey in that silver box.
Yeah, that's interesting to me too, because it shows the Marquis de Carabas. It obviously is like, well, also the Lady Door. I wonder if everyone, like if rat speakers can talk to pigeons and stuff, because like we had that pigeon go find the Marquis and he sent a rat back into Richard's house.
It seems to all be acquirable skills.
Yeah, and I guess whether they listen to you or not is a different story, but it seems like the rats are on the Marquis de Carabas's team. If nothing else, the rats themselves, maybe not rat speakers, but it seems like the rats will always kind of have his back. And because like he said, the rats will tell you what to do with it. Like, just he's leaving faith in those guys.
Yeah. Well, he probably has some favors owed from some of the rats.
That's a great point. I forgot that in this book, rats are like super smart. Yeah. Cool. So we hop back to the party, and we're
in British Museum Station.
Yeah, the British Museum Station. It's decorated like the 20s and 30s with ads on the wall, and Richard makes a comment about how it's like walking through history. And
yeah, he just can't believe it because he thought that there was never a British Museum Station. Certainly not that he ever knew of. But there's ads from what would be London Above there, so it had to have been. He's like, well, shit, I guess I was wrong. This isn't even just like some weird London Below thing that I had no chance of knowing about. This is something that did exist and was used by London Abovers, regular London stuff. Yeah,
that was interesting. When we were going back over our notes, you'd pointed this out, actually. But Hunter said that there are about 50 of these unaccessible little...
Yeah, whenever Richard comments on that sort of thing, Dor explains that it was shut down around 1933. So that explains the time period that the posters sort of end at that he's talking about. He's like, man, this is, none of this would have been useful past the 30s. And then, yeah, like you were just saying, Hunter explains that there are about 50 old stations that are shut down like this one. And not all of them are accessible, not even to the undersiders.
I would assume probably because of that smoke monster. Mind the gap.
That could be a part of it. I mean,
probably some are unaccessible.
Old stations get shut down just because they don't become useful anymore.
They're broken.
Something like that. They didn't want to pay to reconstruct it for whatever purpose or anything like that. Certainly, I mean, if it was 1933, that would be prior to World War II, and London got bombed the fuck out of it. So probably some of those stations were abandoned after the war.
Yeah.
Just as an example, but yeah, for any potential purpose, any of those 50 stations could, for 50 different reasons maybe. They run into a rat. Richard wants to apologize for Anastasia's disappearance. The rat, Mrs. Whiskers, or not even Mrs. Whiskers, she's not married. Yeah, it's Miss Whiskers. I'm so sorry, Miss Whiskers. Says there is no need to be worried. Sometimes those taken as tribute by the night come back.
Yeah, and they don't blame Richard. It's not his fault. I don't know, Miss Whiskers is very... Rats seem to be really chill.
Yeah.
Like rats are very very wise.
And she makes a note of it. She says, your concern is appreciated.
Yeah.
And, and I think she says something like, I'll take note of it or whatever, and then takes off. So
right. Richard was scoring brownie points, I guess, with the rat
those
community.
Rat points.
Yeah. After that, they run into a metal door, and Richard's like, it looks like it's sealed up. And
we're going to need special tools.
Yeah.
I'm starting to get annoyed with Richard's ignorance at this point.
Yeah.
Because there's several points where he's outright refusing to believe things that are right there in front of him. And it's not even just like, oh my God, I can't believe this. He's just saying like, that's literally impossible. What is wrong with you? Are you crazy? As he's talking to somebody who, he knows is more than like 500 years old.
Yeah.
like all these things that he already knows are improbable. He's just being like almost purposely ignorant.
Yeah, it's like he has to hang on to the reality that he knows.
Yeah, maybe so.
To some level,
like
that. So maybe he thinks he's completely losing it, and maybe he can get it back if he just holds on to something. But I don't know what he's thinking. But he'll never accept anything.
The sort of annoyed note that I have here is he hasn't grasped the fact that the family that is all named with different words for door can open doors.
Yeah, and that Dor seems kind of proud of it. She's like, my family, we're openers. It's our talent.
Yeah, and so there's a new word that may be a new thing or may not be. Because previously they've talked about this sort of thing, a magical ability that somebody has is called a knack.
A knack.
Dor calls it a talent. So those are either two different things or two different words for the same thing, where nobility calls them talents and commoners call them knacks.
Yeah, it's probably just a slang, maybe. Who knows?
Yeah.
But I'm assuming they're the same thing.
Yeah, I think that's a safe assumption for sure. I agree that they're probably just the same thing, just two words by different classes.
But whenever Dor opens this door, it takes them to a staircase which goes to London above. And
this would be the tube exit from British Museum Station.
Exactly, yeah. And so then that's when we lose Hunter, because we find out that Hunter's been cursed.
She can't go to London
and
above.
She can't go to London
above.
Doesn't
want to talk about it.
Yeah, so
there's
right
a
here,
short argument, and Dor and Richard proceed without Hunter.
Yeah, here's Hunter's little, "My lady, I cannot. I thought you understood. The Marquis knows." But it's in Richard's mind. It's like, Hunter will look after you as long as you stay in London below. It's like, you got to remember every single word and every order and every detail when you're talking to Carabas.
For someone who's so willfully ignorant, he remembers that specifically.
He's pretty good, yeah. He's like, Hunter will look after you as long as you stay in London below. So, but yeah, there's the little, like, loophole. It also kind of alludes to maybe Dick Carabas being more of a puppeteer than we think, because he's the one that hired Hunter.
He's laying out some like Dumbledore-esque plans.
Yeah, he knew that Hunter couldn't go to London above with him. So,
and that'll either play into something potentially
for sure.
Even if it's just to get her separated from them for this short period.
But yeah, so they leave Hunter behind.
So as they're walking up the stairs and then through, I think it's like a bit of an alley that they end up after the stairs. Yeah. They're talking about Carabas. Richard says Carabas is a bit dodgy, and Dor says something like, yeah, he's a bit dodgy in the same way that rats are a bit furry or something like that. Like, yeah, he's pretty goddamn dodgy.
Yeah.
But they'll talk about it later. They wind up in a storage facility for the museum where they run into Croup and Vandemar. Croup and Vandemar are just there to scare them and let them know they have a mole.
Yeah, it's funny. I don't know. Dor seems to keep, like, since she's in charge and so young, probably, she seems to be having a bit of a struggle keeping herself together all the time, because she seems to snap at Richard a bunch in this book. Because I don't know if it happened right here, but it does kind of feel like the tensions are rising.
She snaps a little bit. So after they run from Croup and Vandemar, they then
even before that, I was going to say that like Richard's like, I wish we had stayed with the bodyguard. And then she's like, and what do you need guarding from, Richard Mayhew? It's like very sort of like, what, like, shut up, you're not in charge. It's like, what are you worried about? Like, I've got it. Like, she was, I don't know, she just seemed like offended. Like, why don't, like, you know, I don't know. And then he's like, well, nothing, you know.
I think she, at least to an extent at that point, she's angry because she wasn't expecting Hunter to have to stay behind. And so she's like, and maybe she's flustered because...
Yeah, when you lose control of things, that's when you get angry. I mean, it's anybody and anything. If you're out of... if you don't have control, and we lose control.
She's probably frustrated with Carabas for...
Exactly.
Being Carabas in this, in this moment.
Like, she knows that he knew, and I guess she probably feels like she's been played.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that makes more sense. But yeah, they run into Croup and Vandemar, and it paints this very scary, horror-esque picture, and they spook them.
Yeah. Spook them up, tell them they've got a mole in the party. Dor and Richard run and make it to the museum.
Yeah.
They try to open a door. I'm sorry?
No, Croup says, "You've been sold out, little ladybird." I just thought that was an interesting thing he called her. Ladybird, I don't know if it matters, but...
Yeah, it may or may not. We'll see if it ever comes up again.
If she was a rat speaker, they might have called her Little Whiskers, or maybe if... but since, I don't know, I know that if it was Bailey, I would have called him a bird-type name, you know? I don't know, Bird Brain is probably what I'd call Bailey, because I'm not super... clever with my insults, but I don't know. That's not really an insult either. It just I don't know. Just something I noted that he called her Ladybird. So, and what were you saying? Well, I'm sorry, I interrupted for that a little bit.
So they run from Croup and Vandemar, and they get to the museum. They try to get in through an iron gate. Dor can't open it. Richard's like, "Oh, what's going on? Why can't you open it?" And Dor's like, "I'm trying to open it, blah blah blah." But then they see that they can probably get in through the main gate because they see a bunch of people lining up over there. So they just go ahead and do that. There appears to be some private party or a showing going on at the museum that night, so they just get in line for that. Jump back to Croup and Vandemar, who are talking about how they don't like where the job is going. It's just another little section where they're talking about how they don't like where the job is going, they're not happy about what they're having to do, and then show off some weirdness about them because they capture a couple of pigeons and then eat them.
Scare her.
There's just more weird stuff.
Yeah, scare her, muttered Croup disgustedly. Scare her. That we should be brought to this. It's like he just hates it. And but also I think one little thing, because this is literally just like a page that it cuts between these two scenes of just so that I guess we can get probably Dora and Richard's perspective, and then we get Croup and Vandemar's perspective. But just on this little page, if anything mattered at all about it, I think that it gave us a little bit more information about their boss, because it's really just them bitching. But right here it says, the governor, kill her, kidnap her, scare her. Why doesn't he make up his mind? I don't know. It just calls their employer. It
gives a title to somebody.
The governor. Yeah. So I just feeling like being the reader, we should be aware if anybody else has ever called the governor. If we go to Governor Station, I don't know. Right. Yeah. Like anybody, even
a bit of a clue into what's going on.
Yeah, for sure. But that was basically it for that little section. Like we're back with the gang.
Back to Dora and Richard, who are exploring the museum to find the Angelus. They're having trouble. Dora remarks about how there can't be too many things with angels on them. Except that, oh shit, we had a character with a boss that was obsessed with angel pieces. Cut to chapter 9. Our girl Jess is back.
Chapter 9.
Several pages about her arranging this party for Mr. Stockton, and now she's losing it trying to make sure it's fire as fuck, and Stockton isn't even showing up on time.
Yeah, there are a few things in here that are just kind of silly. Like Jessica comments how she's convinced that Clarence had only gotten his job because he was A, openly gay, and B, just as openly black. It was like he's openly gay and black, double minority, that's why he got this job, not because he's qualified. Even though later it definitely shows that this
like
dude
immediately
is fucking
after
working
that,
so hard, dude. Clarence
I think even immediately after that little line where she says those two things, and I think it might just be like a weird little commentary for whatever purpose, because it says A, openly gay, and B, just as openly black, and not because he's as qualified as he is. Like, she immediately admits that he's great.
Really good, it's
a weird line.
A weird little way to
I'm not sure what's happening. I guess maybe it's just painting a picture, because when you meet people like that, of any sort of disposition, when they're very openly whatever they are, that's the first thing you think about.
Oh, exactly. that defines them. And obviously Clarence is black and gay. Openly, I feel like they always have a gay black guy as a character in like Tina Fey stuff, like in Kimmy Schmidt.
Right. It's a good character because of how loud that character can be.
I guess so. Yeah.
It brings it's a total different dynamic from probably the majority of the other characters that are in whatever cast for whatever story it is.
Speaking of the timing, like the date of when this book was written, I found a line that was very obviously kind of pointing out when it, not dating it exactly, but say this book was found like 1,000 years in the future and they couldn't find the publishing date or whatever, they could probably date it from this line. Clarence was talking to someone on his mobile phone, a slimline piece of fold-out engineering that made the Star Trek communicators look bulky and old-fashioned. The only Star Trek communicators I remember are the ones from like The Next Generation, those big flip-out ones that were like way bigger than like a grenade. Like they're just a huge handheld device, and it was like a communicator. It didn't have a screen or anything, and you just like talked to it. Like it was basically a super walkie-talkie. And just the fact that they're bragging about how slim and skinny and cool his phone is, and like that is not necessarily the case anymore. Right. We're talking about wanting bigger, badder phones.
Clarence has a Motorola Razr.
That's exactly. Clarence literally, he got a Motorola Razr in 1997.
Everybody wanted the phone. Everybody wanted that shit.
Oh, dude,
you had a Razr, didn't you?
I had a Motorola Razr.
You were a baller.
Dude, the crazy thing was on that, I got it when they had the 2 years and you get a free phone deal or whatever.
Oh, when contracts were still the thing.
Yeah, and freaking my Motorola Razr, it broke one time when I was opening it. Like, I was literally opening it and I felt something kind of grab, and I was like, I don't know what that is, and I just powered through it, and it just snapped the whole thing, and it was like, oh, your screen doesn't work anymore. That was the screen cord. I was like, oh. Well, fuck. But anyway, Clarence is talking on a Motorola Razr, which is super cool to Jessica. Yeah, it's just everything's kind of going to shit around her, and
or she thinks it is.
It feels like it to her, at least. Cause
she's super controlling because she needs this party to be perfect.
Yeah, I mean,
and so she's freaking out about everything, even though everything I think is going just
going
right.
Okay.
Aside from Stockton not being there.
Yeah, Stockton's running 30 minutes late. It says that right there. She's just trying to pretend that's not happening, and that's how they're going to open up the gala or whatever it is. Yeah. I think with Mr. Stockton's speech, because then as we learn, I won't even talk about it. But they were going to start this with Mr. Stockton's speech, and since he hasn't been there for 20 minutes, people this is a bunch of rich people that are going to this event. So rich people are getting antsy.
Yeah, they're not happy about having to wait as long as they're having to wait.
It's funny just watching Clarence deflect. A woman in a hat bore down on him. Her voice was a stentorian? Oh, well. Her voice was basically just demanding, bullying, and decided parliamentary. "Young man," she announced, "do you know who I am?" "Not really, no," lied Clarence, who knew exactly who she was. "Hold on a sec, I'll see if anyone in here does." He's just like, "No, I don't know who you are." He's like, "Fuck, I just got that lady." But it was funny. And he's like, "Jessica, we need to do it. They're about to start a riot." And Jessica's like, "Don't exaggerate." And he's like, "They're literally freaking out and yelling." And he's like, "I made the executive decision. I'm letting him in." And so he just lets him in, and Jessica kind of loses it. But it also shows, to Jessica's credit, how quickly she can change face.
She's perfectly capable of doing this job for this awful, well, maybe not even awful boss, but I would consider him to be an awful boss, because I would be the same way. I would be freaking out if I was trying to control all this stuff and make sure everything was good, and the person I was doing it for was not helping in making it worse.
Yeah. But
I lose it over little shit at my current job that I'm trying to keep organized. It's not even a big deal. Like, "Oh, you didn't put the stapler back where we have designated the stapler to be. Why are you trying to ruin my life?"
Yeah, and this is obviously an expensive thing if the Stocktons are there sponsoring it. He's has champagne for all these people, and he's just showing off this at the museum.
Right, it's his collection of angels that we've been referenced before already, and he's ready to show it off to everybody. He's been collecting for a while or whatever.
Yeah,
but we so for a quick second we jump back to Dor and Richard. Mm-hmm. They're still exploring around looking for the Angelus throughout the museum. They run into some guards who don't notice them. This bit is just to further reiterate the abovers not noticing the belowers.
It kind of confused me. It looked like they noticed them, but when we talked about it again and I reread it, you're exactly right.
They probably made a sound. Maybe they knocked something over. Everybody in London below exists, and if you knock over a tree, someone's going to hear it.
Yeah.
Now, whenever they get there, they might just be like, "I must have just heard something," because there's obviously no one here. Mm-hmm. They're just not noticeable.
Well, they straight up shined the flashlight on him too and didn't see him. So that's when I was like, "Oh, Will's exactly right. Like they didn't see him at all. They must have heard something or just I don't know." But Dor even makes a comment like, "Normally they don't even notice you exist until you stop and talk to them, and even then they forget you pretty quickly." And then Richard, he's like, "But I saw you." And Dor was like, "I know, isn't that odd?" "Everything is odd," said Richard with a feeling.
Right.
Yeah.
So they're bringing attention to how it doesn't make any sense that Dor made it to Richard, or why Dor made it to Richard, and why Richard saw her. So they're bringing that into the spotlight again for a second for us to think about.
Yeah.
So it's definitely going to be a plot point at some point. Because this is now obviously from whenever it initially happened. During our last episode, there was something that we talked about it as well. Mm-hmm. And now this time. So, including the actual instance, that's now 3 times that we've been brought, the weird thing has been brought to our attention.
Yeah, this exhibit is called Angels Over England, an exhibition at the British Museum, sponsored by Stockton's PLC. That's what it says on the billboard or whatever. Anyway, then we go back to Richard and Dor. One little passage I thought was funny was when is the crashing of the two worlds that we were building in Chapter 9, Jessica and Richard, when they were for surely going to run into each other. It's when Richard notices Jessica. "Would you think," Richard asked, "that I was being picky if I pointed out that trying to find something with an angel on it in here is going to be like trying to find a needle and an oh my god, it's Jessica." And just lost his train of thought. Oh my god, Jessica's there. And then Dor's like, "Someone you knew?" And Richard's like, "Well, we were supposed to be married, but saved you, and I don't exist." And Dor's like, "Her? Well, she's very clean." I don't know. She feels obligated to say something nice,
but her standards aren't the same as London above her standards.
Yeah.
So she's like, she's clean,
and and then 2 seconds later, she loses it over some food that she sees on the table. So she is very
because she's starving. There's a point earlier where she says, "I've opened too many damn doors today."
Oh yeah, I'm hungry.
So she's starving. She's like, "Let me get some of this food so we can keep doing stuff."
Yeah,
and then she starts exploring, looking at every single angel thing, which is obviously a ton of things in this exhibit. There's a point where Jessica sees Richard and Dor, feels like she knew them from somewhere but can't place them. Then there's a short passage about how it reminded her of a time that her mother knew somebody but couldn't remember who she was at a party. And then there's this analogy to beads of mercury.
Mercury.
Beads of mercury that she can't put her finger on. It'll just like slide out. I think they say it like 3 times in this chapter, but that's just to illustrate the effect that the London below people have around them, where even if you were super close to somebody like Richard was with Jessica, you start becoming not noticeable, even if it's just in the back of their mind.
It is neat though how Jessica did notice Richard at the very least. Like even though they were still so close, I mean, they obviously did have. It was just like
some like tickle in the back of her brain is like what it calls it or something like that.
She didn't remember his name anymore because last time she brought the name back, but she still noticed him, which I thought was at least something that makes me think that Richard might still have a chance to get back to his old life. I don't know if he's even still thinking about it.
It could even just be like a tease of that possibility because now. And there was part towards the end of the last reading section that we had where Dora says, "I'm going to try and help you get back to your life after all this, blah, blah, blah." That's...
And maybe another foreshadow to that'll never happen. It's just leading us on like we're doing, Richard.
Yeah, at the very least, it's, giving us... it's painting a path for us to assume that the story is going to go down, so that we can try to... at least just on our own, mentally navigate that direction.
Yeah, to be honest with you, at this point, I'm not even 100% sure I know what the whole point of the book is. Like, it just sort of feels like Richard ran into this girl.
It's going to have to climax pretty quick, because it's a short book.
Yeah, because, he runs into this girl. She's some noble in, like, the under London below, but her whole family got murdered. We're just trying to solve this mystery, and then...
Yeah, I don't know what the resolution is going to be.
Is that the point, like, to solve the mystery? And
because right now we're building all the pieces, so we've still probably, I would assume we've still got at least a couple of more major events before whatever the climax is, because we're putting all the pieces together. So at this point, we're going to get... Well, I guess we can talk about this one real quick, because we've only got another short passage before we're done.
Yeah.
Let's see, so...
But so Jessica, like, points out to Clarence, like, who are those people? And he's like, to Clarence, like, who are those guys? And he's like, I don't know, maybe they're journalists? And she's like, I'm going to go talk to him because it's really bugging me that I don't know who they are. And she goes down and has a really, really awkward conversation with Richard. Like Will and I were talking about earlier. And it almost seems like Richard is...
trying to upset her almost in a way.
Exactly.
He's like, his demeanor is really like, oh, and you do this and you're that. And we did this and we were going to get married, but then you dumped me.
Yeah, it's super...
Yeah, bitch.
Yeah, exactly.
Like it was her fault.
Yeah.
Which it wasn't.
So when they're meeting, it's
weird.
Richard's like, "You're looking very fine, Jessica," Richard said. And then she's like, "You have the advantage of me," she said, smiling roguishly, like, "Oh, he knows who I am, but I don't know who he is." And then he's like, "You're Jessica Bartram. You're a marketing executive at Stockton's. You're 26, your birthday is April the 23rd, and in the throes of an extreme passion, you have a tendency to hum the Monkees song, I'm a Believer." And it's like, here's a bunch of stuff I know about you. Let me creep you out. And she just sort of is like, really it worked. You creeped me out.
Maybe it's him just lashing out at the whole situation.
It probably is.
Because this is like the first chance that he gets to sort of do that, and even though it's not her fault, this is a person that he can place blame onto.
And she won't remember, so...
Yeah, that's also true.
But you're right, that probably is what it is. He hasn't had a chance to sort of... deal with any of his feelings about them breaking up either. So, but that sort of sets the scene too, which I thought was kind of a classy thing for Jessica to do, because she didn't just scream like "security." She went up and was went back to Clarence, and he's like, "Hey, who was that?" And she's like, "I don't know. They just make me uncomfortable. Let's call security." Like she handled it very professional.
She is utterly professional.
Yeah,
she is completely aware that even though she's being totally weirded out, she's still organizing this party.
Exactly.
Stockton has not arrived. She has to make sure that it continues to be smooth while we're waiting for the whole point to show up.
Exactly.
And guess what? At that moment, Stockton enters the room. He walks in. She walks up to him. They talk. Stockton says, "I'll give a speech now." And so
you can give your speech now.
So he goes up and does the speech, talks about, why he likes angels more or less, why he became rich.
It's kind of a cool story. I don't know if it's true, but it was a story about how as a kid he used to go to this museum because it was free and he didn't have any money. He talks about this angel display that he used to go look at and how the angel seemed to look. Here, I have it written down. It was like it knew what I was thinking. He felt drawn back to it after making shitloads of money. He'd spent shitloads of money to get it.
To restore it.
Restored, thank you. I didn't have the word in my head. But he got it restored. And
then he reveals it. And everybody's like, "Oh, wow, that's beautiful, blah, blah, blah."
A beautiful angel.
And Dor is like, "That's the Angelus."
That's the Angelus.
She knows immediately, like the scroll told her she would. You would know it immediately.
Seems like a lot of the magic in this is sort of instinctive, which is cool. It's kind of like instinctual magic. Because it's more like fairies and makes it less accessible to me, so it makes it even more fantastical and magical.
There's less rules
true.
involved and more like it's just there and it's happening, you know?
But yeah, so she freaks out. That's the Angelus, and she runs on stage to go to it. And she's like, come on, Richard.
But Richard's now getting accosted by the guards that Jessica had told Clarence to get.
Yeah, that she had just called on him.
So as Richard's trying to get away from the guards are like, nah. Dora sees this and does the only thing that described she can think of to do. She just grabs the mic and screams, and it's like an otherworldly scream. Everybody stops, and it's like, cool. What's going on? It gives a second for Richard to run away from the guard and get up on stage.
It seemed like something that would probably work, too, if it was like a little girl that ran on stage and did that. But also, we would remember that. So the good thing is that everyone's going to forget in like 4 seconds that she just screamed and disrupted the party. But if somebody did that, it would probably make everybody stop enough so that he could get away. They might lower their guard. That was a pretty good move, I thought.
So then door opens the Angelus, and they enter. It's a huge white light. Everybody's like totally stunned. It's like the most beautiful thing ever or whatever, I guess. Yeah. You described it as the Ark of the Covenant at the end of Indiana Jones.
That's what it made me think of, because they're just opening something in front of an audience.
They're opening something holy and, super grand and incredible, because it's presumably some relic of God.
Yeah, of course, though, the Ark of the Covenant, like you
kills
said,
everybody.
Just killed them all.
Melts a bunch of Nazi faces. I likened it to everybody getting memory wiped, like with the neuralizer in Men in Black.
Yeah, that's...
And ultimately, that's what ends up happening.
That's exactly what happens. At the very end, Jessica's like, I think the party's going pretty good.
Visually, it's like the Ark of the Covenant. Yeah. Practically, it's like the neuralizer.
Yeah. It's funny. I don't know. Neil Gaiman seems to do this a lot. He seems to write the ending from one person's perspective and then rewrite it from somebody else's perspective. Not necessarily taking a step back, but letting you get in their eyes, because at the end of that, it described the big light.
Time does like stop so that we can sidestep over to another character, see what it goes on, and then immediately sidestep back to where we were to continue moving forward.
Yeah, because it's talking about how they saw this big light show, and then it was over, and then everyone forgot about it, and then it goes back and it has Richard and Dora walking through the light, and then they get kind of flashed by it too. Richard even talks about how it's like, I think he says it's like overwhelming, or is that earlier? But yes, this is right at the end.
So they go through the door and they end up in Islington's halls.
Yeah, and again, this is probably one of the things that you were thinking, like, this is super annoying. Why are you denying an angel existing, Richard? It's literally looking at you, talking to you. And I
like this line, though. This is an example of the writing that Neil Gaiman continues to use that I really do enjoy, the humor that he has in a lot of his writing. Richard did not believe in angels. He never had believed in angels. He was damned if he was going to start now. Still, it was much easier to not believe in something when it was not actually looking directly at you and saying your name. So, it's, that's definitely, it's him, being like, I can't believe in this. I've never believed in this before. How is this? He's still like in disbelief, like, how is any of this real? But here it is. Yeah. Very obviously real.
I gotta accept it. But that was the end. The angel just sort of, it doesn't have gender. It doesn't, but it's very beautiful.
Yeah, they use that same language in the end of the last section where it just continually says it, and it was very beautiful.
It's kind of neat too, because it said the angel was welcoming, like, the Lady Dora, you are welcome in my halls, and then it also said, you too are welcome in my halls, Richard Mayhew. Please follow me. And then
we cut away.
Yeah, so then we go, and the last little scene of this chapter is with the Marquis de Carabas, and he is at the hospital that Krupp and Vandemar use as their hideout.
Yeah, he's wandering through the hospital. It even takes you down the path that it first describes the hospital with, where you go down the stairs, you go through the wooden floor, and all that sort of stuff. Very obviously showing that he's going through somewhere that we've already been through, somewhere that we know, and then he wipes off a table of all the garbage that was there, the razor blades and the, I think maybe even, I can't remember, does it talk about the glass that Vandemar had left over or something like that?
I think so.
But the things that they had left there on the table prior, in that last scene where they were throwing the razors and stuff, wipes all that shit off the table, sits down and waits for them to show up.
Yeah, he sits down comfortably, luxuriantly, in the darkness of the cellar, and he closes his eyes. Eventually the door to the cellar was opened, and people came in. The Marquis de Carabas opened his eyes and yawned. Then he flashed Mr. Krupp and Mr. Vandemar a huge smile. "Hello, boys," said de Carabas. "I thought it high time I came down here and talked to you in person." I was talking to Will about it before we did the show, that to me that ending was a really good cliffhanger for two reasons. Because it shows, it makes me think, like, is DeCarabas like their boss and he's going to pay them a visit in person because he's starting to get pissed? Or is he fed up with them coming after? Is he just intervening now because that's one of the errands he had to go run as being part of Door's team? I don't know. It seemed he knew how to get there so easily. It seemed like he must be a little bit more in the know than we gave him credit for initially. At least with Krupp and Vandemar.
Yeah, there's so many possibilities that this could take. The two most obvious being that he's the boss coming to visit, say what's going on. The second most obvious being he's there to now interfere on Door's behalf, hopefully. And then other, less obvious things. Maybe it's just he's just going there to talk with them. Maybe. As somebody without any moral standard. He's just like, hey, maybe he's going there saying, you know what, I'm just doing this because I have a job. You guys have a job. What would it take for us to just, reconcile and make our jobs easier or something, just trying to figure out some middle ground because it doesn't seem like he actually cares how anything turns out.
No, it seems like he cares about something though. Like
he's got some sort of goal, even if it's only in seeing how much damage he can do.
Yeah, he's definitely... He's
kind of chaotic.
Rogue. Yeah, I would say he's starting to look a little bit more chaotic dark than chaotic neutral. Or chaotic, what would it be in?
He would be a chaotic neutral, would be my initial impression of him.
Impression, yeah.
But he could definitely be...
chaotic evil.
But
that was a real cool cliffhanger for Chapter 9. It made me, again, not want to stop.
Yeah. It's getting really good. It'll be interesting to see where it continues. I kept accidentally sneaking the first couple of sentences of of Chapter 10 as I was reading stuff, because I was just stuck at an airport for a lot of hours on a Sunday. Somebody's talking about how, do you prefer wine or something like that?
Yeah, that's the first sentence it says right here. Do you drink wine? It asked. I guess that's probably...
Yeah, they're back to Islington.
Yeah,
so
that's
we're
fun.
Jumping back to them. There's a chance that we won't see what happens with Carabas and Krupp and Vandemar until 2 chapters from now.
Yeah, I don't know. Who knows? DeCarabas said he wasn't going to hang out with the gang again until the next...
It really depends on how long, because first Door and Richard have to get back to Hunter. Mm-hmm. So do they go back the same way they came? Do they have to go another way back? Because they couldn't even get to the British Museum station without being dropped off there by the carriage.
Yeah, as I was thinking about that, I was like, when they left, I was thinking, well, they're going to go somewhere else. Like, I don't know, like, nowhere. They're just going to go back the way they came. Like, this is a forward progression, not like a backward. I thought just like, that's silly.
Yeah, I don't think that they can go back the way they came either, because the
they
Earl
open the door. Oh, sorry.
The Earl, whenever Door is asking him, how do we get to Islington, the Earl says, you can only get there once by the quick way. After that, you have to go the long way, which is way dangerous. And so they've already used the quick way. So I don't know if you can then also go back the quick way, or if that whole passage through the storage facility and then through, I guess the quick way was the Angelus.
Are they in London above technically now, or do you think they're back in London below?
I think they're in London below right now, I would assume. Because they're in Islington's halls, which are part of Angel Station somewhere.
Good point. Okay.
In the same way that the Earl's Court is in Earl's Court Station.
Okay, that makes sense.
That sort of thing.
Okay, cool. So maybe Hunter's taking the long way.
Potentially.
Anyone could do it.
That's the only thing that we don't really know is what Hunter says. I will wait here until she returns.
That is true. She did say I'll wait.
But then I don't know how they're going to get back to British Museum Station, because they had to get dropped off there by the Earl. And then, whatever, they could figure out some way to get back there, or they'll just meet her somewhere.
Angel Islington might be able to...
He may just return them back there.
Put them back.
The very may be what happens. The Carabas says that he will meet them at the next market. Yeah. So next time Floating Market comes around is when we'll see Carabas.
For sure.
We may see him before then, but that's the next time that Door and Richard will see him. I hope that that's the next time that we see him too. Yeah. Because I don't think, for storytelling's sake, I don't think that I want to know what he's doing up until that point. I think it would be more interesting to have all of his activity up until that point revealed later on.
Yeah, a big reveal rather than keeping us updated the whole time.
Especially since we don't have a whole lot left in this book, so if they spend too much time going over every action that he does between now and then, that could potentially take up more time than they might have.
Yeah, it's hard to think that DeCarabas is evil, because
I think he's like we said, he's just chaotic neutral.
Yeah, because there's something extra in this book. It's a little, it's a mini story that he wrote. It's all about how the Marquis got his coat back, and I didn't even know he lost his coat, so that might be a little spoiler about just what the story's called. But, or maybe he lost it 400 years ago, because this says an altogether different prologue 400 years earlier. So it's just a little fun, but it's a fun little story. So, I don't know. It seemed like people wanted more of de Carabas, so without even meaning to, it might have spoiled something for me and telling me that I think de Carabas might not necessarily be the main bad guy. I think, just him being who he is, everybody likes him. He seems to be at the end, it seems to be a well-liked character, so I've still got faith in him. And Jessica, she came back. That was cool.
Yeah, I wonder if it's just because it's a short story, everything has to take place very quickly and in a small space as well. I think that or at least what I'm assuming right now, is that, and then potentially even Gary comes back, just because everything is happening in such a tight space that we can't help but run into these characters that had strong connections. Mm-hmm. I don't know that they'll necessarily be any more important than just literally being there.
You're right.
Providing a vehicle for something to happen, because the whole angel thing was obviously a constructed narrative that, had to be thought up, because we were told that Stockton collects angels, long ago, before we knew anything that was going to happen. Mm-hmm. And now they have to go find an angel, and they have to find a thing that has angels on it to get to the angel. So that was obviously a constructed narrative that had to be drawn out. Mm-hmm. But that could have been something that was laid out by any character, not necessarily Jessica. Yeah, it just took the form of Jessica. So I think that the same thing could potentially happen with Gary or anybody else.
How far do you want to read this next time? I know we probably wanted to finish this book in the next 2 shows.
So let's do chapters 10 through 15, because that's about, what did we find out just now? It's about 90
It's about 90 pages, yeah.
And then next episode we can do another 90-ish pages, and that'll end the book.
Yeah, it's been hard to stop after just the 70, so hopefully this...
another 20.
Hopefully this extra 20 will be just what we're looking for.
Yeah, and then this is an even split for what's remaining in the book, so we got 2 more weeks of this book. I guess this next week we'll do these chapters, and then for the final episode of this book reading, we'll also at that time decide the next book.
Yeah, we can do that.
And then just continue from there. But so 2 more episodes of Neverwhere. This week's reading is chapters 10 through 15. So once you
10 to 15.
Is it 2:15? I'm sorry.
Let me double check, because it was in my book.
So chapters 10, 11, 12, 13, 14.
Yeah, so
those are the chapters we're reading.
Yeah.
Stop after chapter 14.
Yeah.
We will continue from there.
Yeah, let us know what y'all are thinking. Hit us up on Twitter at ears_stamps. Our Gmail, dogears ampersand time. Dogears and timestamps. Yeah. Fully written out at gmail.com. And then
comment on the episode on iTunes, Google Play, wherever it is, SoundCloud. Those are the 3 platforms that you can comment on.
Yeah.
You can find the episode everywhere, basically. I think the only place that we're not on is Spotify, because that's really difficult to get on for some stupid, annoying reason. Maybe I'll figure it out one day.
But for now...
Yeah, but for now, you just search dog ears, space, ampersand, space, timestamps. You'll find us on iTunes, Google Play, any RSS feed apps that you use for your other podcasts.
Yeah, leave us a review. Tell us what you're thinking. Please, tweet at us. Do whatever you want. Give us some input. We'd love to know what you're thinking. This is a book club. Let's interact.
Right. We post updates for whenever we post the episode on the Twitter account, the ears_stamps. I also post on my Instagram whenever I publish the episode on Wednesday. It's just at I throw napalm. Spells just like all those words should be spelled.
Smushed together.
And then that also shares to my Facebook, but don't add me on Facebook.
Anyway, so I think that does it. 10 to 2:15, not through 15.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, I'm Will Hedrick.
And I'm Jordan Schaffer.
And this is Dog Ears and Timestamps. We'll see you next week.
Boom. Roasted.
Roasted.